unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
This Week in Gaming with Naomi Kyle.
Hey everyone, welcome back to This Week in Gaming. Today we've got something a little different, a special one-off interview that I'm really excited to share with you. It's about an interesting new title that instantly caught my attention, a game that just released last week on Steam called Sanatorium, a Mental Asylum Simulator. I got to sit down with the game's creators, two students, Sebastian Riedi and Fabian Hunziker, to talk about how this game came to life, what they learned in the process, and how they approached such a sensitive topic through the interactive storytelling of their game. Here's our interview.
Select game mode. Multiplayer.
Hi, Sebastian and Fabian. Thank you so much for joining me on This Week in Gaming. It's good to have you guys.
Hey. Hi. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's my first time actually interviewing two people on the show, so that's going to be fun. Tell me about your game. I want to know how it all got started. Why did you guys want to get into game development and work on this game?
Well, originally it started out as my bachelor's project in the Zurich University of the Arts, where we studied game design together. That was like the beginning in 2020 when the pandemic came, so lots of time to work on it. And then I think in 2022 you joined, Fabian.
Yeah, the game kind of caught attention at the school. So Sebastian thought that he would like to go into a professional direction. And then I joined him as the artist originally.
Yeah.
And you guys always wanted to work in video games?
Not really. I did a completely different job before the studies. I worked in the car industries, and it's mainly I'm not kind of a gamer, but it's more like the medium that really caught me because it's so diverse and full of different stuff that you can put in it and tell stories.
Yeah, and I did I always kind of worked in media. So we do have stuff like apprenticeships where I did a trade apprentice for like media stuff and just being like a media tech person. And I always wanted to study something in the arts or get something or do something there first. I thought it was film. But the film school at the same art school where we later studied game design, I was rejected there once. And then I kind of changed directions and thought, yeah, maybe game design is even better because you can do so much more with way less people compared to film.
You can put a lot of stuff in it, like storytelling, visuals, animation, sound design, music, and everything. It's even more interesting than a film, I would say, to make.
And you give the control to the player, and it's also
exactly.
You build the whole world almost from scratch. It's really cool. Can you share a bit about where the idea of Sanatorium came? Was it inspired by anything? Was there anything like that you could pull from?
One inspiration that I think is also pretty recognizable is for once this Papers, Please a bit. This idea of having a kind of a job simulator or where you play as a job in a game is also what I called, or the fancy word I used back in when I was at school was profession mimicry. So kind of masking as another job. And I think Switzerland is kind of famous for these type of games because we're also the home country of the farming simulator. So that was kind of the initial impulse to do something like a job simulator, but in an environment where the rules always change. That was kind of always the fascinating quality that games like Papers, Please, for example, had, that the rules always kind of changed what the people need to bring. And I started out to thinking that, probably something like in the mental health thing, because there the contrast between what's today and earlier standard is really striking. It's just very striking difference of how the whole field developed.
Tell me more about that. That's actually the part that I find the most interesting, because I also want to know, just for people who are listening, could you briefly explain what the game of Sanatorium involves? And then can you go into kind of the history of that and why it's so fascinating, some of the interesting things you found during your research?
In Sanatorium, a mental asylum simulator, you play in 1923. You work in a mental asylum. You treat and test and diagnose patients, but you're not a doctor. You're an imposter, and you kind of just visit yourself into the institution to get a family member that has been committed there against their will out. And that's kind of the whole setup of the game. And it shows the earlier broad collection of pseudoscience that was kind of used in the 20s, or is inspired from stuff that was still used in the 20s. So you get patients and you have to classify their symptoms in a phrenology chart. So phrenology is the idea that certain dimples in your skull, and more specific later than on that, regions on your skull and the brain correspond to very specific parts of your personality, and that you could assess a person's characteristic from their skull. It's some instances, then it changed more to that you could pinpoint exactly where these kind of feelings are. And that was also the basis for a large part for stuff like lobotomy that was then later introduced in the 30s. So that was one part. But at the same time, we have people like Freud, or in Switzerland here we have big stuff with Jung, or the revolutionary stuff for the time compared to other places like North America, where Sanatorium takes place, is that there was much more emphasis on being empathetic to the patient and trying to understand the patient's history. So we have these kind of developments, and at the same time very interventionist philosophy, like the lobotomy, or making people fit into society.
Yeah, that's the interesting approach. And does it come from an interest in psychology today and psychiatric care today that you guys wanted to focus on this particular subject matter?
I think it was more like how can we turn some game mechanics with workplace stuff. How can we fit something in there to make it?
Yeah.
And of course, we're both very interested in history, and I think it was, none of us has a background in the field, so it was more the interest in how to put something into the game mechanics.
Yeah, but we have some, or also had done some experiences with it, or even during the game, or working on the game, because we started in 22, like really strongly, and there were also some hard times, or like once I saw that there was a GDC talk about game development, burnout, occupational hazard, and so it's kind of a big thing in that regard also. And I for my part always enjoy to learn about new stuff, like everything. If there is something new, or just getting into a subject matter and into a field, even if it might not seem relevant at the moment, but then you can really lose yourself sometimes in there.
Yeah, it's a very deep and very interesting field. You can dive into it, especially how fast it changes.
Was there anything particularly interesting about your research for that time period that struck you and surprised you?
During the initial project, I also went and visited the curator of the Museum of Psychiatry of the University of Bern. So that's like the clinic, the university psychiatry clinic there. And the curator is also a professor for psychiatry and also originally a physician, an MD, then later a psychiatry specialization. And I came with like the raw concept of the game. So in the game, you have the mechanics of the game is that if you do the correct diagnosis and apply treatments, then you get prestige to advance in the game. So first you start in the Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 4 in the end. And the other big thing is that the patients pay you each day. You get paid by the patient directly. So the patient's financial background really makes a difference, how much money you get out of a patient, so to speak. And he confirmed that for me, that until the 50s or after the war in Europe, where there was some kind of medical care as a baseline, where the state would pay that stuff, that you usually had people paying themselves, but also that there were these kind of charities that would pay for the treatment of some people. And was interesting is that even in 1900, in some clinics, or at least there, this one in Bern, they had something like art therapy. So they noticed that especially traumatized people could really process this stuff better if they worked into arts and craft. And it was way cheaper than any other treatment because you just had to give them pencils and so on.
Right.
So they have a very interesting collection of all the art that was drawn by patients who have been there or have been there a long time in their life. We did also consult the stuff for, there was one woman journalist in the 19th century, which is what was kind of odd for that time, Nellie Bly. And she wrote a whole account where she pretended to be mad to be committed to a mental asylum. And that kind of goes through until the 20s, that most of the patients in mental asylums, long-term patients, were women. Because usually if men had some issue there, or if there was a bigger issue, it usually would result in aggression, which then would much rather result in a prison sentence or instead of a sanatorium stay. So that's really something special. It's mostly that this image of the dangerous mental patient is also something that we really want to avoid while making Sanatorium, to not have this.
That's interesting. I love that. I love that you guys are taking that approach. And there's a lot of interesting history there too as well. I wanted to know if there was any challenges that you guys ran into, or maybe something specific that happened during development that you could share the story of that you had to solve for. Was there anything like that you guys ran into?
It's a side project for us. We never did that full time. So there's also always the challenge of to get by financially and find the time to develop and everything. So it's a hard business.
Yeah.
Well, when it now gained more traction, I even said to some of our there was this moment where people joined our Discord that we didn't know personally, and said they loved the game and so on, or even when it gains traction somewhere else, or someone else makes a small post about it, or just gives us very, very big praise. I always get a bit. I used the term anxieting. So it's kind of exciting, but also anxiety-inducing, because there are always like these big points where you work towards too, and it would be. It takes really a strain to just work on it, but I think to some extent that's just what much of the games industry, be it indie or AAA, is about, that you do it because you really love it, because you really want to do it, because otherwise there wouldn't be so much of an issue that people had these burnouts, or even that you would be willing to work so much in some instances. We really needed to have time also for ourselves and to see that, okay, look, we really also need to take care of ourselves. It's not the whole life is not the game.
Yeah. Work-life balance. Yeah, it's so important. And yeah, you can get lost not only playing games, but making them as well. Last question would be, really quickly, what is next for you guys? Have you enjoyed your experience? Or I know you just talked about, doing it for the love of the experience and the love of doing it, but is that something that's now has grown into a passion? Maybe you guys are going to continue making other games or expand on this one?
We have a few ideas for potential other games that we could do. So it's that wouldn't be a problem. And I think we're really want to continue. Yeah. But right now we're looking forward to the release. Also a very, very exciting moment when it's finally
exciting
when it's finally done and we can cheer to each other and see how it goes.
I'm so excited for it to come out, and I'll make sure to spread the word because it's very cool what you guys are doing. I love the concept of the game, and congratulations on your first video game launch. It's so exciting.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Look for Sanatorium, a mental asylum simulator available to play now on Steam.
Flawless victory! Continue!
And that's it for our special interview episode of This Week in Gaming. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you all next week with our regular scheduled episodes. Talk to you later.
This Week in Gaming is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more podcasts just like these.
iHeartRadio, everything holiday, all in one place. From 24/7 Christmas music to the stories behind the Christmas hits with Drew Savage. Listen to the podcast on the free iHeartRadio app, your destination for all things Christmas. These are the songs that get you in the spirit. Keep listening for all your Christmas favorites.